Nicholas Smith is no different. His book is called The History of We, and it's a children's book, but it talks about our all origins in Africa for the entire human race. And he does it on a child's level. So he's going to tell us what made him think of this and how he's able to do this. Nicholas, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
And I see some illustrations in your background. I assume you wrote and illustrated the book.
I did. This is my 10th picture book, but it's actually my first hand-painted picture book. So
Oh,
That
it's
is
all
amazing and beautiful. I
wow.
thank you.
love the detail.
Thank you. Acrylic on canvas. The canvases are pretty big. I mean, usually they're about 3 feet by 3 feet, 4 by 5. This is my studio here in Los Angeles. I live in Leimert Park in Los Angeles, and so I do all my paintings here.
Leimert
Oh,
Park is a pretty historic area. Do you get a lot of your inspiration from your neighborhood?
Yeah, it's I love it here. I've been here for about 3 years. Moving down from Koreatown, and it's just there's so much culture, there's so much community.
Yes.
Never you can't go like half a block without, being inspired by something culturally. And sometimes I can literally hear like they'll have like drum circles in Lambert Park Square over there, and it's just like you
Really?
can just hear it from down the block. So
See, that
yeah.
reminds me of New Orleans. We have the drum
Hmm.
circles and that happen in Congo Square every Sunday.
Yeah, very similar.
hmm.
Nice.
So tell us about the history of we and what it's about and what was your inspiration for writing the book and illustrating the book. I'd love to see some of the
Absolutely.
illustrations too. Um,
Thank
you can either show us on the in the book itself, or we have the shared screen option already selected. So if you wanted to show us any that might be on your laptop, you're welcome to do that as well. It's up
Oh,
to
great.
you.
Okay.
Mhm.
Um, Wonderful. So let me see if I can show this really quickly here.
Okay.
Um,
Lovely.
can you see? Let's see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just one second here. So can you see that right
Oh
there?
yeah. Very
I see
well.
it.
Beautiful.
Okay, so the thing about this book, I mean, it is kind of like the out of Africa, like we all come from Africa kind of book that I always wanted to make. And in doing this research, I went back 200,000 years. I mean, so the origins of humanity, modern humans, it goes back 233,000 years to Ethiopia, Homo Kibish in Ethiopia. And literally every single person on the earth can be traced back to this woman that you see. I call her Mawa or Queen Mother. She is the earliest known modern human. And the designation of modern human, it basically just means um the the first humans with the same skeletal structure as us, the same brain capacity as us. So these modern humans, they spoke sentences with nouns and verbs. They laughed and cried. They invented amazing things. They did wonderful things, right? So I wanted to really just go back to that time in humanity because I felt like this era of humanity, it's never been properly visually documented. Like when I was growing up, so I grew up in Texas,
Okay,
and when
we're in
I
Texas. We're in Texas.
Houston, Texas.
Okay, well that's where I am in Houston.
Hey, shout out
What part?
Houston.
Yeah, what part of Houston?
I love it. So I ended up going like when I was really young from the city to Humble to Spring. So
Okay.
I grew up mainly in Spring. Yeah.
Okay. I'm close to Spring.
Okay,
FM
cool.
1960. So that I mean
That's right.
area.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just last month I was just at the Barnes and Noble on 1960 Champions
Yeah,
and
that's
just kind
5 minutes
doing a
from my
big
house.
yeah, amazing. We had like a little
Look at
like history
y'all
of week
having a
kickoff.
family reunion.
I know, right? Hey, cuz. Um so yeah. I mean the funny thing about it is like the kind of the point of the book is to remind all of humanity that like we're all an extended family of cousins, right? Like we kind of like, at some point Africans decided to leave the continent of Africa and traveling tribes are responsible for, all of us, right? So we populated the world, right? And so, if you kind of start to see the beginning of the book, you'll see like there's this lush valley. It's Kibish in Ethiopia, and it's just starts with that question of like, what did the beginning look like? Like
Mm,
when I was growing up in Texas, we had history books that they talked about the cradle of civilization, right? And they talked about Mesopotamia and someplace outside of Africa, which is where they said that's where they told us that this is where civilization started, right?
right, right.
And it was always like, oh, 10,000 years ago. And, that was the cradle of civilization, right? But if you actually look at, I would say, 200 to 200,000 years before that, there's like a massive chunk of time that was never really documented, never put in the history books. And we kind of probably know why, because it all points back to how humanity really innovated and really, became, a thriving society, right? And so, with the book, I want to kind of get into what really was that like? I mean, we did a lot of things. I talk about like we dreamed and we spoke, we shared and we healed, we sang and danced and built and explored. We lived.
Right.
So we did all of these things. We literally, were able to figure out how to continue as a human society, right? And so I go back to the earliest everything, like the first known artifacts, the first known art artifacts were found in the Blombos Cave in South Africa. And so I want to visualize, well, what did the first artists look like, right? They literally had to create paint by crushing rocks and mixing it with water. And they started to tell stories on cave walls. And this was, the Stone Age. This is the Middle Paleolithic era. So, obviously, like whenever it's kind of depicted in movies and stuff, like for some
Mm-hmm.
reason they depict like the caveman, first of all, as like a white person, which doesn't make any sense. But then also maybe as like dumb or less intelligent or whatever. But this is the Middle Paleolithic era. This is humanity as it was when we had the same brain capacity that we have now. So these were intelligent people, and they told stories visually. The Still Bay people of South Africa, 75,000 years ago, were taking shells from the shore and they were braiding grass and they were making necklaces and they were fashionable. They were, braiding their hair. They were doing all these different things. And it's like, I want people to be able to see this, right? This is what humanity was before it was anything else, right? And
Right.
so I go and talk about like, literally the first musicians, the first dancers, right? The first inventors. They were braiding nets. They were figuring out how to literally invent glue from plant resin to be able to make spears, to be able to, hunt. They were literally architects designing and building, architecture, huts, and different things, and trying to figure out how to um, block out the winds and the rain and things like that. Literally figuring out how to do agriculture and harvesting wheat for the first time and figuring out how to live off of, cereals and different grains like that. Figuring out how to go from plant to plant, like the cave of pigeons in Morocco. And this was over 65,000 years ago that they were figuring out how to go from plant to plant and see which one of these plants can actually, we can figure out how to grind it up and create some sort of like antibacterial, antifungal, anti-inflammatory cream, right? And so they were doing this like a long time ago in Africa. And when I talk to young kids about all of these things, all these inventions, it's just their eyes get so big. They're like, I can't believe like we've been doing this for a long time. Like we've been doing this for so long, and it all started in Africa. And these stories, they don't for some reason they don't end up in the history books, right?
Right.
And so I take them through like the Congo, the Ashango bone from about I believe about 45,000 years ago. The Ashango bone was the oldest math calculator that they were starting to use to figure out the phases of the moon, starting to map out the stars. Literally the first swimmers. I did an art piece for Ava DuVernay for her film Origin a couple years
Oh,
ago. And that was one of the moments where I was really like I kind of had this spark for creating this book because I created some art of um, this young man named Al Bright. And so with Al Bright, he was born in the 1940s. Um, he actually was not allowed to go to the swimming pool and swim, with his baseball championship teammates because of racism, right? And so there's so many stories of
oh
young
wow.
black kids like him, their parents, their grandparents who never were allowed to go to the swimming pool, never allowed to swim, right? Never learned how to swim, afraid of the swimming pool, right? And I just wished that I could have told like him or all these other black kids, do you realize that like the very first swimmer in human history looked like you? Like the first swimmers, like we had to invent swimming, right? Somebody had to come up with that, right? And
Right.
so I talk about that in the book. I talk about the first explorers. We were literally hollowing out trees and creating sailboats. And, by 60,000 years ago, we were making it to Southeast Asia and we were making it to Australia by boat. And like we were really great explorers, right? And so I wish I could have seen, when I was young, I wish I could have seen explorers who look like me, because
Mm.
that is literally factually what happened. And so this whole book, it really is like a slice of human history.
It really is.
It is a very factual piece. I call it a National Geographic documentary in a way. So it really gets into all of that, exactly the way it happened. It was this entire book was vetted by the Leakey family, who's one of the top paleontologists in the world. And so it's very factual. It has everything backed up by science and research. And one of the great things is that I'm able to kind of go through at the end of the book and give a timeline of history, and really like pinpoint all those specific places, like the Cave of Pigeons, the Blombos Cave in South Africa, all these different places, and just kind of like pinpoint so that everybody can start to do some more research about it and study all these different people, the Stillbay people, the Moroccans, all these different groups
Right.
from throughout history. And so, but I do believe that I just feel like what this is it is what I call educational justice. So like all of that, if you can see that red arrow right there, that's like the 10,000 year mark where they told us when we were young that that's where civilization began, and they literally like disregarded the 200,000 years before that. And so the entire book is that 200,000 year span. I believe it is educational justice, right? Like we have to kind of get back to what was that actually happened that helped us get to this point where we are today. And so it is I that's why I really wanted to kind of pinpoint like that out of Africa theory, which is it is the prevailing theory. It is literally how paleontologists have kind of pointed to that this is when we left Africa and this is where we went. And this is when we got there. And so all of those different paths are kind of laid out in the book. So yeah,
That's
that's in a
fantastic.
nutshell why I made the book and why I feel like it's super important.
Well, it's
That's
certainly
amazing. Yeah.
groundbreaking. And
Thank you.
now, did you travel to any of these places where you're able to do that from the book, or did you use mostly research?
Mostly research. I haven't been able to get out to like, South Africa. I definitely want to go to Tanzania and see, I literally they have dig sites that are like, you know, 2 million year old rocks that were, like certain types of artifacts that they found that they've dug up. Definitely want to go to the Blumbles Cave in South Africa. That's on my list of things to see. So I haven't been able to see those yet, but I did a ton of research. There's so many. It's interesting, like how available all this information is. The Middle Paleolithic era, the information is everywhere. It's all out there for people to see. So there's like a lot of different journals and books like Maeve Leakey, who I was telling about the Leakey family. Maeve Leakey has books like Sediments in Time, tons of articles about what life was like. And I think one of the most interesting facts that I did come across is the fact that, you know, it was literally that long ago that we did have the brain capacity that we have now. So we were, doing the same things we're doing now, just a long time ago, right? So that, and then especially with the timeline, um, just being able to chart out exactly when we left Africa and
Hmm.
literally I kind of document like, okay, so when did our skin tone start to get a little bit lighter and lighter? And it's I mean, if you're looking at like the 90,000 year ago mark when we left, I mean, we were in Asia and Europe and all these other places for a good 80,000 years before the skin tone started to get very light. And, maybe it was only about 9,000 years ago that, skin started to get pale or white. And that's all just because of the fact that some of our ancestors went to colder climates that didn't have a lot of sunlight.
Hmm.
And for those reasons, whatever reasons, we end up, trying to split ourselves up in all these, quote unquote races.
Hmm.
And then there's racism. So the book kind of like points to the fact that it really is a very trivial thing that we even argue about skin color because we're literally all the same race. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, that's true.
Yeah.
It's a couple of things. One, people acknowledge it, but then they dismiss it. When people, now that we can all have our DNA tested, at a reasonable cost,
Mhm.
everybody knows that they their roots originated in Africa, but it always
Yeah,
gets like dismissed. Well,
Right.
well, of course we start in Africa, but then they just move on,
right.
So
Well, they think Africa is just one big old country. It's
yeah,
not a
that's
Right.
true
continent full of
too.
many countries.
But they don't even embrace the one big old country. They just dismiss it and say, of course we all man originated, but then all the depictions they do of the first man are not black. They're not brown or black people, and they would
Right.
have to be. And the Bible even references it in the Garden of Eden.
Right.
So, it's it's there, but it's dismissed.
Well,
And
Yeah.
one thing
they
I
have
like
to say
about the
civilization
okay.
started when Caucasian people started doing things. That's like
Right.
Yeah.
when the clock started, that's the way it's measured. When you were talking about Mesopotamia and
Mhm.
Hmm.
that's how it's measured. But go ahead, Rhonda.
No, I was just going to say one thing I like about the book is that it opens kids' eyes to so many things all at one time.
Mhm.
Um, art, storytelling, culture, history. And then they're learning more about who they are as people. So, I mean, I just see this book being able to accomplish so many things with just one reading. And I wonder, is that something that you had in mind when you started this project, or did it evolve into that as you were working on it?
I definitely had it in mind in the sense that, like I was saying, like I wish I could tell, certain black kids, like, hey, like the first swimmers look like you, the first explorers look like you.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like it started off with just a few things. Like I wish I just want to show like a whole ocean full of explorers who are black. And from there, I didn't realize at the time, but I needed to branch into pretty much every area. So, I was like, okay, well then let's go into medicine and, let's
Right.
go into fashion and, the first artist. And so, it just naturally had to go into every other part because it's literally like we invented everything. And it was such a long time, literally like, you know, uh, even after we left Africa, it was a good 75, 80,000 years of just more developing and inventing and doing all these things. Before there was any other person that could be considered like non-black, right?
Mhm.
And so yeah, so it started off as kind of one thing and then it just branched into everything.
Yeah, I
Love it.
can see an amazing opportunity, and I don't know if you've already explored this, but for animation
Mm,
around the book, just take the
yeah.
whole book and make it an animated, maybe hour
Yeah,
that children
that's
and
always
adults could enjoy.
right. That's definitely something that I always have in the back of my mind. Like, yeah, what are different ways that we can explore how to continue telling the story um, through everything from like, graphic novel to animated, maybe TV show, film, all these different types of things. And there's just like a limitless, you know, areas to start to be able to like retell the story or branch off into new, because there's like literally if you have hundreds of thousands of years of history, then there's so many stories to tell. And
Right. You're not going to run
Yeah,
out.
right.
yeah, it's like it's never ending. So
You
yeah.
have to have a season one, episode 1 through 10.
Right. 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 Absolutely.
So, when did you pick up the Illustrator bug? Like, did you know at 5 years old, was that you, was it just in you from a young age?
It was. I've been making art my whole life. And yeah, just I always whatever I saw on TV, I would try to create cartoons and whatever. And it's just been, it's that's how it always was. But I wasn't the type of kid to say like, oh, I want to be an artist when I grow up. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And um I ended up going to well, I went to Hampton University in Virginia, HBCU, and I studied architecture because, kind of a
You
combination
said
of art and
Hampton?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm from
Yes, we
Newport
know
Hampton.
News.
Hampton.
I think everybody on the show tonight
Wow,
has had some kind of connection to
that's amazing.
Virginia. Yeah, I'm from Newport News. I live in Houston now. I mean, but all of my formative years were there.
Amazing.
Newport News. Yeah.
Amazing. So yeah, I went from Houston to Hampton Roads. in 2003, and then ended up going straight to California. I became an Imagineer, doing Disneyland architecture,
Oh, okay.
from starting from 2008 to 2019. So that was 11 years, and now I'm a full-time freelance illustrator.
Love
So
it.
yeah.
Oh, wow. It's wonderful.
So
So
you
how many?
illustrate for other people's books too?
Yeah, so I have a few other ones like I Am Ruby Bridges,
Oh,
um,
okay. I'm familiar with
written by
that
the
one.
amazing historical
Yes.
legendary Ruby Bridges.
Hmm.
And so there's sometimes it's books like that or
Okay.
like superhero stuff like Captain America. This actually came out in February. Captain America,
Okay.
Hero Looks Like
It
You.
looks like you.
So sometimes I'll illustrate. My next book is written by Sam Cooke, the legendary Sam Cooke. So a change
Oh,
is gonna
wow.
come.
Oh,
So like kind of his classic song. But I'm adding a story that goes with the music. So sometimes
Well, you have to
I'll
keep us posted
illustrate.
on that.
Yeah, so that comes out in September, very excited, first week of September. And you know, I feel like I mean I definitely love like doing both, like writing and illustrating, but sometimes there's some stories that I just have to like if I get an email that says, "Would you like to illustrate Ruby Bridges' book?" I'm like, absolutely. I would
Yeah, who's
love to
going to
do
turn that
yeah.
down?
that. Right. Yes.
Yeah.
So
Well,
absolutely.
Nicholas, this has been an amazing story. Just the whole
Thank
thing.
you.
Your book, your personal story, just the whole thing. It's just
Thank
I
you.
amazing.
agree.
Mhm. I had read about what the book was about, but I didn't know exactly what you put in there. And I'm so glad that I had did the screen share so we could really see everything and the audience could. So
Right,
Yeah.
right.
congratulations on the amazing
I mean, because you
talent.
could have described it, but it's a
Right,
whole different feel to actually
Yeah, you
see
have
it.
to see it. You have to
right,
see it. Yeah,
right.
for sure.
So just amazing work. Well, congratulations and continued success with the
Thank you.
book because it just came out. When did it come out? Recently. Came out recently.
Yeah, it just came out. And so just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I do consider it a picture book. I don't necessarily say a children's book, but like I think it's for all ages, you know.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
the whole family can gather around it and learn from it. So um check it out. It's available wherever books are sold.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on the show and
Absolutely. Thank you for
congratulations
having me.
again. Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a great one.
Thank you. Take care.
Good night.